At the wedding altar, Royce Barrett's muscles tensed as he gazed upon the approaching bride. This woman bore no resemblance to his dreams or expectations. Yet, within half a year, she would become his salvation, rescuing his life, his property, and transforming his entire understanding of himself. Dawn's golden light stretched across the modest timber church while Royce fidgeted with his shirt collar, perspiration forming despite the crisp morning air. In the first row, his father Cyrus. Wainwright maintained a rigid posture, his piercing stare locked onto his son with predatory intensity. Escape was impossible now. Outstanding debts had mounted beyond control, lenders grew increasingly aggressive, and this union represented their sole hope of preventing the Barrett property from falling into creditors' hands. Magnolia Voss proceeded down the narrow aisle, her modest tan gown whispering against the floorboards. Royce's insides churned as he observed her full figure and rounded features. This ceremony fell far short of his fantasies. He had envisioned wedding someone stunning, a bride who would inspire jealousy among other men. Instead, fate bound him to this unfamiliar woman whose father controlled the neighboring territory that included water access more precious than treasure in this parched region. "Stay calm," he muttered internally, his fingers quivering. "This is merely a transaction, nothing beyond that." However, as Magnolia drew nearer, an unforeseen moment occurred. Her eyes lifted to meet his directly and rather than displaying the embarrassment or anxiety he anticipated, something entirely different resided there. Her expression remained unwavering, almost defiant, as though she could decipher every notion flooding his consciousness. "Mr. Barrett," she spoke softly upon reaching his side, her tone containing an unexpected firmness. "Miss Voss," he responded, his words barely audible. The minister commenced his traditional ceremony, yet Royce scarcely registered the words. His thoughts swirled with bitterness toward his father, this predicament, and the woman beside him who embodied everything he wished to avoid. He imagined the townsmen who would gossip mockingly, the crude remarks they would make regarding his substantial spouse. Thus, when asked to accept Magnolia as his bride, Royce's affirmation emerged hollow and mechanical. Yet, when Magnolia recited her promises, her voice resonated boldly throughout the small sanctuary, and something in her delivery compelled him to observe her anew. Her gaze wasn't lowered or apologetic. Instead, it burned with an intensity he had previously overlooked. When she declared "I do," it resembled less an agreement and more a battle cry. The wedding band weighed heavily as they departed the church side by side. Even more burdensome was recognizing he understood virtually nothing about his new wife. Judging by her confident bearing despite the murmured comments from onlookers, he sensed she possessed depths beyond her appearance. Little did Royce know that before their wedding day concluded, Magnolia would demonstrate just how perilous underestimating her could be. Their journey to the Barrett homestead stretched into the most excruciating hour of Royce's existence. Magnolia occupied the wagon bench beside him, hands clasped, maintaining complete silence. Yet her quietness wasn't meek or deferential. It resembled the stillness preceding a tempest. "I imagine you'll wish to tour the residence," Royce eventually offered, attempting to dissolve the awkwardness. His voice emerged harsher than intended. "I've already examined it," Magnolia answered without glancing his way. "3 separate occasions while you were in town drowning your disappointment about this arrangement." Royce's grip tightened on the leather straps. How had she discovered his saloon visits? He believed he'd been discreet. "I'm uncertain what you mean." "Naturally you aren't," she replied with apparent amusement. "Just as you're unaware that your workers have been trading your livestock to settle their personal obligations. Or that your father holds debts across half the territory, not solely to my family." The wagon jolted over rough terrain, but Royce barely registered the disturbance. His mind reeled. "That's inconceivable. These men have served us for years." "Devotion doesn't provide sustenance, Mr. Barrett, and cornered individuals resort to desperate measures." Magnolia finally faced him, her eyes containing knowledge that made his stomach plummet. "Your supervisor, Wade McKinley, has been embezzling from livestock transactions for 6 months. Your father suspects but cannot dismiss him since Wade prevents." the remaining workers from abandoning their posts. Upon arriving at the ranch, Royce remained motionless in the driver's position, viewing his land with fresh perspective. The deteriorating fence posts he'd ignored, the neglected corral requiring maintenance, the diminished herd grazing nearby. Suddenly, everything became clear. His father hadn't simply gambled away their wealth. They had been hemorrhaging money from numerous sources, and this marriage served as temporary relief, not a permanent solution. "How do you possess this information?" he inquired, his voice nearly inaudible. "Because I've been preparing for this union longer than you realize," Magnolia responded, dismounting with unexpected elegance. "My father didn't orchestrate this alliance merely for land access, Mr. Barrett. He arranged it because your ranch holds the key to managing water distribution across 3 counties. However, someone must possess sufficient intelligence to succeed." She approached the house, then hesitated at the entrance. "The question remains whether you're wise enough to listen or too prideful to lose everything while maintaining false confidence." Royce observed her vanish through their home's front entrance, his thoughts spinning with uncertainties. Who was this woman? How had she acquired such detailed knowledge of his family's affairs? Most troubling of all, what additional secrets did she harbor? As he tended to the horses, one thought persistently haunted him. If Magnolia understood this much about his difficulties, what exactly was her strategy for resolving them? By nightfall, Royce learned that wedding Magnolia resembled welcoming a hurricane into his residence. Everything familiar would soon be transformed. He discovered her in his father's office, positioned behind the enormous wooden desk as though it belonged to her. Documents spread before her like military plans, accounting ledgers, property titles, and legal papers covering every surface. What chilled his blood was seeing Wade McKinley standing before the desk like a student summoned for discipline. "What's happening here?" Royce demanded, entering the room. Wade's complexion had paled, sweat forming on his brow. "Your bride knows about the livestock." "Obviously, I'm aware," Magnolia stated calmly, maintaining her focus on the paperwork. "I know. You've been selling 15 head monthly while recording only 10. I know you've been stealing the difference, and I know you intended to attribute losses to cattle thieves when accounting discrepancies surfaced." Royce felt reality shifting beneath him. The figures had never aligned properly, yet his father had always managed the books, and Wade had seemed like family. "Wade, tell me this is false." The foreman's shoulders drooped. "The ranch was failing regardless, Royce. I have children to support." "Had?" Magnolia corrected sharply. "You had employment. Now you face a decision. Restore what you stole, or I'll summon the sheriff before dawn." Wade's expression suddenly hardened. "You believe you can simply arrive and issue commands? You're nobody, just some heavy woman whose father paid to dispose of her." The silence that followed was absolute. Royce expected Magnolia to collapse, to retreat from the cruel words. Instead, she rose slowly, her movements measured and deliberate. "Mr. McKinley," she said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, "you appear to believe my size reflects my capabilities. That's your initial error." She opened the desk drawer and retrieved a small leather notebook. "Your second mistake was presuming I arrived unprepared." Opening the journal, she began reading. "May 5th 10th sold 20 head to Morrison's group, reported 12. May 22nd sold 18 head to the railway camp, reported 10, June 3rd. She looked up at Wade, whose face had drained of color. "Should I continue?" "I have 4 months of comprehensive records, including buyer names and exact amounts you embezzled." Wade's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but froze when Magnolia's voice sliced through the air. "I wouldn't recommend that," she said quietly. "Your third mistake was assuming I came alone." Footsteps on the front porch made everyone turn. Through the window, Royce observed 3 men approaching strangers with hard faces and positioned firearms, marking them as far from ordinary ranch workers. "Who are they?" Royce whispered. Magnolia smiled for the first time since their meeting. "And it wasn't gentle. Insurance, Mr. Barrett, the kind that ensures people honor their commitments." Wade bolted toward the door but found his path blocked by the largest of the three newcomers. The stranger stood like a mountain with scarred knuckles and eyes that had witnessed excessive violence. "Departing somewhere, friend?" the large man asked pleasantly. What followed would teach Royce that he had married far more than his father's solution to their debts. The confrontation lasted exactly 3 minutes. Wade McKinley, facing 3 armed men and a woman who knew every detail of his theft, crumbled like a fragile structure in a windstorm. "The money's concealed in my cabin," Wade stammered, his earlier confidence completely vanished. "Most of it anyway. I spent some on medicine for my youngest daughter. The fever nearly claimed her." Magnolia's expression softened slightly. "What did the medicine cost? $40? Then you'll return the remainder and consider the $40 your final payment," she said, nodding to the large man. "Hank will accompany you to collect it." "You'll be gone by sunrise." As Wade was escorted away, Royce grasped Magnolia's arm. "Wait, who are these men? How do you know them?" For the first time since meeting her, Magnolia appeared uncertain. "That's complicated." "Complicated how?" Royce's grip intensified. "My foreman just admitted to stealing because 3 armed strangers entered my home. I deserve an explanation." Magnolia freed herself and moved to the window, watching as Hank escorted Wade toward the bunkhouse. "My father didn't arrange this. Marriage solely for the land. Royce, he orchestrated it because your ranch controls the most valuable water rights in 3 territories. But others desire those rights as well, dangerous individuals." "What sort of dangerous individuals?" "The kind who would prefer seeing you dead rather than successful." She turned back to him, and for the first time he witnessed fear in her eyes. 3 weeks ago, a man named Cormac Doolin made an offer for your ranch. When your father refused, Doolin made clear that accidents befall stubborn ranchers. Royce felt his stomach drop. "You're suggesting someone wants me murdered?" "I'm saying someone wants to eliminate anyone controlling this land. That's why my father acted swiftly with this marriage. That's why I brought protection," she gestured toward the men outside. "And that's why we must cooperate, regardless of personal feelings." Before Royce could respond, a gunshot echoed from the bunkhouse direction. Through the window, they saw Hank stumbling backward, clutching his shoulder, while Wade McKinley mounted a horse with a rifle. "He was prepared for this," Magnolia breathed. "He knew we would discover his theft." Another shot shattered the study window, sending glass cascading across the floor. Royce grabbed Magnolia and pulled her behind the desk as bullets splintered the wooden walls around them. "Stay low!" he shouted, reaching for his gun belt. Looking around the desk's edge, his blood froze. Wade wasn't alone. At least 6 riders had appeared at the property's edge, all armed, advancing toward the house with lethal intent. "Magnolia," Royce said, his voice tight with realization. "How did Wade know we would confront him tonight?" Her face paled as the terrible truth struck them both. "Because someone informed him we would be." The house erupted into chaos as bullets penetrated the walls like deadly rain. Royce crawled toward the gun cabinet while Magnolia pressed against the floor behind the heavy desk. "How many men do you have?" Royce shouted over the gunfire. 3, Magnolia called back. "But Hank's wounded and the others are trapped in the barn." Royce realized they were outnumbered 2 to 1, confined in a house not designed to withstand a siege. As he reached for his rifle, something made him freeze. Through the broken window, he could see Wade pointing directly at the study, gesturing to other riders as if he knew exactly where they were hiding. "Magnolia," he said slowly. "Wade couldn't have known we'd be in this room unless someone revealed our plan." "Someone who knew I was going to confront him tonight," she finished, her face grim. "But who?" "The only people aware were the 3 of them and Magnolia's men outside. Unless—" "Your father," Royce breathed. "Where is he?" "He departed for town immediately after the wedding. Said he had business to handle." Magnolia's eyes widened with realization. "But he's the only one who knew the timing." A fresh volley of gunfire destroyed what remained of the windows. Outside, Wade's voice rose above the noise. "Burn them out." The house is old timber. It'll ignite quickly. The scent of smoke began drifting through the broken windows as orange light flickered against the walls. They had set fire to the front porch. "We must move," Royce said, grabbing ammunition from the cabinet. "The back door is covered," Magnolia interrupted. "I saw 2 riders circle around. They were trapped between fire and bullets with no escape route." But as smoke thickened, Magnolia did something that completely shocked Royce. She stood up, walked calmly to the desk, and began stuffing papers into a leather satchel. "What are you doing?" Royce demanded. "We need to escape." "These documents are worth more than this house," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "The real reason Wade betrayed you, the real reason Cormac Doolan wants this land, it's all here." She pulled out a map covered in red markings and legal notations. "This isn't simply about water rights, Royce. A railroad is coming through this territory. Your ranch sits directly in the proposed route's path. Whoever owns this land will become extraordinarily wealthy." Before Royce could process this revelation, the front wall exploded inward as burning timbers crashed through the room. The fire was spreading faster than anticipated, and smoke was becoming lethal. "The root cellar!" Royce grabbed Magnolia's hand. "And there's a tunnel leading to the barn." They ran toward the kitchen as the ceiling began collapsing behind them. But reaching the cellar door, Royce heard something that froze his blood, his father's voice calling from the yard. "Royce, son, are you in there?" Cyrus Wainwright had returned, and from his tone, he seemed genuinely surprised by the fire. The root cellar tunnel was older than Royce remembered, wooden supports creaking ominously as they crawled through the narrow passage. Behind them, the burning house sounds grew fainter, but ahead lay unknown danger. "Your father sounds genuinely surprised," Magnolia whispered as they moved through darkness. "Then who warned Wade?" Royce asked, though a terrible possibility was forming in his mind. They emerged into the barn, finding Hank sitting against a hay bale, his shoulder roughly bandaged but his gun still ready. The other 2 men, Frank and Cole, were positioned at the barn doors, watching the burning house. "Ma'am," Hank said upon seeing them, "we have a problem." That foreman knew exactly where we'd be positioned, knew about the tunnel too. Royce felt puzzle pieces clicking together, forming a picture he didn't want to see. "Magnolia, who else knew you were coming here tonight? Who else knew your exact plan?" Her face went pale in the fire's flickering light. "Only my father and ... She stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. "And who?" "My father's business partner. The man who helped arrange all the marriage details, who knew about the railroad survey, who had access to both families' financial records." Her voice broke. "Ezekiel Marsh, my own father." The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Her father hadn't just arranged this marriage to save the Barrett Ranch, he had arranged it to destroy it. Outside, Cyrus Wainwright's voice grew more frantic. "Royce, the house is lost, but if you're alive, answer me." "He's not part of this," Royce realized. "My father truly doesn't know." Before they could decide whether to trust Cyrus, Frank called from the barn door, "Riders approaching. At least 10 of them, and they're not here to help fight the fire." Through the barn door, Royce could see torches approaching across the darkened ranchland. But these weren't concerned neighbors. They rode in formation, weapons ready, moving with military precision. "Cormac Doolan," Magnolia breathed. "This was all planned. The marriage, Wade's theft, tonight's confrontation, it was all designed to flush us out so Doolan could finish this." Royce understood they had walked directly into a trap months in the making. His marriage to Magnolia hadn't been a solution to his problems. It had been the final piece of someone else's plan to destroy everything he owned. "Your father sold us out," he said bitterly. "But why? What does he gain from our deaths?" Magnolia's face hardened with familiar resolve. "Everything. With both of us dead, he inherits my portion of the land deal and gets to sell water rights to Doolan without interference, plus whatever Doolan promised for delivering your ranch." As the riders drew closer, Magnolia reached into her satchel and pulled out something that made Royce's breath catch, a second map she hadn't shown him before, covered in different markings and signed with official seals. "What is that?" "Insurance," she said grimly. and the real reason my father wants me dead tonight. This second map changed everything. It showed railroad routes, water rights, and land ownership, but with one crucial difference. It bore the territorial government's official seal and was signed by the railroad commissioner himself. This is the actual railroad route, Magnolia explained quickly as approaching horses grew louder. The one Doolin and my father don't know exists. The railroad isn't coming through your ranch, Royce. It's coming through the valley 3 miles south, through land that becomes worthless without access to your water rights. Royce realized that everything, the threats, the marriage, the planned destruction, was based on false information. So if Doolin discovers the real route, he doesn't know. Only 3 people have seen this map. The railroad commissioner, myself, and now you. Magnolia's eyes blazed with determination. I've been playing a longer game than anyone realized, including my father. Their revelation was interrupted by gunfire erupting outside the barn. Through the doorway, they could see Cyrus Wainwright diving for cover behind a water trough as Doolin's men surrounded him. They're going to kill him, Royce said, moving toward his rifle. Wait, Magnolia grabbed his arm. Doolin needs your father alive to sign over the deed. This is about more than just taking the land. It's about making it legal. Indeed, they heard Doolin's voice booming across the yard. Cyrus Wainwright, I know you're alive. I have a proposition. From their hiding spot, they watched as Doolin himself rode into the firelight, a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes that reflected the flames. He dismounted slowly, confidently, like someone who had already won. Your son is dead, Cyrus, Doolin called out. Burned up with his fat bride? But you can still save yourself. Sign over the ranch deed and I'll let you ride away with enough money to start over. But Cyrus Wainwright surprised everyone. Instead of cowering, he stood up from behind the water trough, his own gun drawn. My son isn't dead, Doolin, and even if he was, I wouldn't sell his ranch to scum like you. The standoff that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds. Doolin's men outnumbered Cyrus 20-1, and the old rancher knew it, but he didn't back down. Kill him, Doolin ordered casually. That's when Magnolia did something proving once and for all that Royce had married a woman unlike any other. She stepped out of the barn, hands raised, the government map clearly visible in her grip. Mr. Doolin, she called out, her voice carrying across the yard. Before you make any permanent decisions, you might want to see what I'm holding. Every gun turned toward her, but Magnolia walked forward with the calm confidence of someone holding all the cards. This is the real railroad survey, signed and sealed by the territorial commissioner, and it shows that you've been planning to steal land that will be worthless in 6 months. Doolin's face went white as he recognized the official seals on the document, but his recovery was swift and deadly. Then I guess I'll have to kill all of you and find another way to make money from this territory. But as his men raised their weapons, Magnolia smiled, the same dangerous smile Royce had seen earlier. That would be a mistake, Mr. Doolin, because the territorial marshal is already on his way, and he has very specific instructions about what to do with claim jumpers and murderers. The sound of approaching hoofbeats from the east made everyone freeze. But instead of more of Doolin's men, what emerged from the darkness was a sight that made the claim jumper's face go ashen. 6 territorial marshals, badges gleaming in the firelight, rifles ready. Marshal Thompson, Magnolia called out calmly. Perfect timing. Doolin spun toward her, his face twisted with rage and confusion. This is impossible. How did you ... Send word 3 days ago? Magnolia finished. The same day I discovered my father's plan to have us both killed. Did you really think I would walk into this marriage blind? As the marshals surrounded Doolin's men, the truth of Magnolia's strategy became clear. She hadn't just married Royce. To save his ranch, she had orchestrated an elaborate trap to bring down the entire criminal conspiracy threatening the territory. Cormac Doolin, Marshal Thompson announced, his voice carrying federal authority. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, illegal land seizure, and bribery of territorial officials. But Doolin made one last desperate play, grabbing for his gun and shouting to his men, "Kill them all!" The gunfight that followed lasted less than 30 seconds. Doolin's hired guns, caught between the marshals and Magnolia's men, surrendered quickly when they realized they were outmatched and legally outgunned. Doolin himself took a bullet in the shoulder when he tried to shoot Marshal Thompson, ending his threat permanently. As the dust settled and the marshals led the criminals away, Royce found himself standing next to his wife in the ruins of his burned home, finally understanding what he had gained and lost in a single day. "You planned all of this," he said, not as an accusation, but as amazed recognition. "I planned to survive," Magnolia replied. "And to make sure that you could too." "But why? You could have walked away. Let Doolin destroy everything. Why risk your life for a man who didn't want to marry you?" Magnolia turned to face him, and in the dying firelight, Royce saw something in her eyes that made his chest tighten. "Because I saw who you really were, Royce Barrett. Not the prejudiced man who judged me by my appearance, but the man who would sacrifice everything to protect his family. The man who crawled through a burning tunnel to save someone he barely knew." Royce realized that while he had been focused on what he thought he was losing, he had been blind to what he was actually gaining. Magnolia wasn't just intelligent and brave. She was loyal, strategic, and had risked everything to save not just herself, but him and his father. "The railroad money," he said suddenly. "The real route will make us wealthy, but not the way anyone expected," Magnolia smiled. "The new route needs water rights for the station depot, our water rights, legally, fairly, and profitably." 6 months later, Royce Barrett stood on the porch of his rebuilt home, watching his wife direct the construction of the new railroad station. She had been right about everything: the route, the profit, and most importantly, about the value of looking beyond appearances to see what truly mattered. He had been forced to marry a stranger he judged too quickly. What he discovered was a partner who saved his life, his ranch, and taught him that real strength comes in forms he never expected to recognize. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable story, where destiny and courage collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.